So students, our next topic is taxes. Okay, you are all familiar with the term taxes. Let us see what they were. Now the rulers of the Mahajanapadas were building huge forts and maintaining big armies. Underline this. First line, as the rulers of the Mahajanapadas were building huge forts and maintaining big armies, they needed more resources, right? If you are building something, that means money will be spent. If you are maintaining an army, that means soldiers need to be paid regular salaries. From where do the kings get all this money? So they needed officials to collect money from the people who were living inside the city, inside the area. Now the rulers had people who used to collect money from them called taxes. Instead of depending on occasional gifts bought by the people, as in the case of the Raja of the Janapadas, they started collecting regular taxes. Instead, पहले तो क्या था that only people will bring gifts. But now it became compulsory and the people were supposed to pay taxes to the rulers. Now there are some points given in your book. Let us read that. Now taxes on crops was the most important. This was basically because most people were farmers. Most of the people living in that city were farmers. So the king started having some taxes on the farmers. Usually the tax was at 1/6 of what was produced. This was known as bhag or a share. That means 1/6 of which whatever the farmer has produced, it should be given to the king. Okay. The second one, there were the taxes on craft person as well. These could have been in the form of labor. Now the craft people, the artists, they were also supposed to provide taxes and services to the people. For example, a weaver or a smith. What is a weaver? Someone who makes cloth. And smith, blacksmith, right, who does iron work. They might have had to work a day every month for the king, right? The king is not taking money from them, but instead he is making them work for him for free for 1 day a month. Herders were also expected to pay taxes in the form of animal and animal produce. Right now the herders, people who used to rear animals and cattle, they either had to give animals like horses and elephants or animal produce like milk, curd, cheese and so on. There were also taxes on goods that were brought and sold through trade. Now whatever trade was going on inside the king's empire, right? Whatever trade, whatever merchants were selling or buying, there was a small tax on those items as well, and that tax was collected by the king. And hunters and gatherers also had to provide forest produce to the Raja. So you can see the king is taking taxes from farmers, okay? He's taking them from the artists slash craft persons, okay? Then from herders, people who are rearing animals, growing cattle. Then we have traders and hunters, right? So the king has imposed taxes which are compulsory, that all people should give something to the king, right? Farmers, craft person, herders, traders, hunter gatherers, they all were supposed to give something to the king in form of taxes, okay, so that the king can maintain an army, can build huge walls, okay. So now students, we have learned about taxes. Now let us learn about changes in agriculture, how the people used to grow crops in the Janapadas and Mahajanapadas, okay. So read from page number 52, first line. There were two major changes in agriculture around this time, okay. One was the growing use of iron ploughshare. What used to happen? Iron came to be used widely in the making of ploughshare. What is a ploughshare? I'll just tell you. Hoes and other farming tools. Now people started to build iron tools. Earlier the tools were made up of wood, but they used to break easily, right? Wood breaks easily. But now they started building their tools in iron, okay, because iron was much more stronger. Okay, this improved farmer techniques, improved quality and quantity of crops produced. Now farmers began growing two crops annually, that once in a year, okay, in 1 year they were now growing two crops. So let's see what was iron ploughshare. See, iron ploughshare is this tool which is used to plough the field. इससे क्या होता है? You dig the field, okay, by an iron ploughshare. Earlier wooden plough was used, but now people were using iron plough, and because of that the yield of crops increased. Now the yield means the produce we are getting out, that produce, the crop, it increased, okay. Let us read. That heavy clay soil could be turned over better than with a wooden plowshare so that more grain could be produced. Now the second important thing was transplanting paddy. Paddy is rice. Now this meant that instead of scattering seed on the ground from which plants would sprout, saplings were grown and then planted in the field. When someone grows rice today, right, they plant the seed, and after the sapling is out, then they take it out and plant it in the field. That is called transplanting paddy. Okay, this led to increased production as many more plants survived. Okay, however, it was back-breaking work. You can see how the people who are working in this field, they are bent down. It's called back-breaking work because it hurts your back. Okay. Now, cattle rearing was another feature of the economy. The people were also rearing cattle. Okay, peasants was owner of the land and landless workers worked on others' land. Now, the people who didn't have their own land, they used to work on someone else's land, and that person would pay those workers for their hard work. So students, up until now we have covered these topics: how some men became rulers, Varnas, Janpadas and Mahajanapadas, taxes and changes in agriculture. Now we are taking a closer look at two of the Mahajanapadas of the earlier time. We are taking a closer look. And what was the name of those Mahajanapadas? Number one is Magad. Okay, and number two is Vajji. So let us learn about them one at a time. First, let us study about Magad. You will find Magad on map 4 on page number 57. Students, please note that here it is written page number 57 in your book. It is written wrong. You should correct it to page number 49. Okay, because the map is given on page number 49 and on page 57 there is no map. Okay. So on page number 49 you can see a map and you can find Magad very easily. I showed you earlier on the board as well. See now, Magad became the most important Mahajanapada in about 200 years. Many rivers such as the Ganga and Son flowed through Magad. This was important for transport. Rivers were very useful for transport, water supplies and making the land fertile. Okay, parts of Magad were forested. Now see, Magad was very strategically placed because it was very near to two big rivers, that was Ganga and Son. Okay. Also, water supply was very essential and the land was very fertile and parts of Magad were forested. Elephants which lived in the forest could be captured and trained for the army. Okay, now the soldiers started training people for the training elephants for the army. Forests also provided wood for building houses, carts and chariots. Besides, there were iron ore mines in the region that could be tapped to make strong tools and weapons. In the area of Magad there were forests. People could make use of animals, they could tame the animals, they could hunt the animals for food as well as use the wood. Okay. Apart from that, there were iron ore mines in this area. People started to excavate that iron so that they can make better weapons and tools. Magad had two very powerful rulers. Underline this, it's very important that you should remember. Magad had two very powerful rulers, which was Bimbisara and Ajatasattu. Okay, who used all possible means to conquer other Janpadas. Now these two rulers, they were very warlike, means they used to attack all the other available Janapadas so that they can expand their territory. Mahapadmananda was another important ruler. He extended his control up to the northwest part of the subcontinent. Rajgriha, present-day Rajgir, in Bihar was the capital of Magad for several years, and later the capital was shifted to Pataliputra. Earlier the Magad capital was Rajgriha, okay, but later was shifted to Pataliputra, which is present-day Patna. If you would remember, we learnt about Ashoka. His empire was the Mauryan Empire, and we are learning about the Magad Empire. Okay, the Magad Empire became to be known as Mauryan Empire later. Okay. Now, more than 300 years ago, a ruler named Alexander, who lived in Macedonia in Europe, wanted to become a world conqueror. You have all heard about Alexander the Great, right? Now, he wanted to attack Magad. Okay, but he didn't conquer the world, but did conquer parts of Egypt and West Asia and came to the Indian subcontinent. He took his entire army, Alexander the Great, and came to the Indian subcontinent and reached up to the banks of the river Beas. Okay, when he wanted to march further eastwards, his soldiers refused. the soldiers of Alexander who had conquered all the other great lands, they refused to march on Magad. Why? They were scared, as they had heard that the rulers of India had vast armies of foot soldiers, chariots and elephants. What the rulers had heard? That the rulers of India had foot soldiers, chariots and elephants in so large numbers that they were scared that we will not go and fight them. Okay, such was the might of that Magad empire, that people from outer world, people from other countries, okay, they came to conquer it, but the soldiers refused, saying that they are scared of this particular area. They were scared of the Indian subcontinent rulers. Okay, now write your second internal question on page number 53. Okay, on page number 53, write your second internal question on the top of the page, that is, who was Alexander? Okay, I'm writing the spelling of Alexander here for your convenience. Alexander. Who was Alexander? Okay. Now I'm reciting the answer as well. Please write the answer here. Okay, the space is given. The answer is Alexander was the ruler of Macedonia in Europe. Underline this, sorry, write this. Alexander was the ruler of Macedonia. Okay. Macedonia in Europe. So this was about the Magad Empire. Now let's see some images related to it. So students, you can see that river Ganga and Son are flowing through the area where the Magad Empire used to be, right? Today, what is called Patna was Patliputra, which was the capital city of the Magad Empire. The entire area was very well forested, okay? The entire area was covered in forest, which increased the Magad's military strength. How? Because they could tap into the elephants, they could tame the elephants for their army. The forest provided woods for building houses, carts and chariots, correct? And also this area was rich in iron ore. Okay, there were iron ore mines here. People could use that iron to build better swords and weapons. Okay. Now what happened? Invasion of Alexander. I just told you that Alexander was a ruler of Macedonia in Europe. Okay, he wanted to become a world conqueror. He wanted to rule over the entire world. After conquering parts of Egypt and West Asia, he started to move towards the Indian subcontinent. After he had conquered Egypt and West Asia, now he started to towards the Indian subcontinent. His forces reached up to the banks of the Beas. Beas is the name of a river. Okay, his forces was just about to enter into India, but what happened? I just told you that when he wanted to march further eastward, his soldiers refused. His soldiers said that no, we cannot go any further. Why? Because they were afraid of the rulers of India. Why? Because they had heard that they had armies of foot soldiers, chariots and elephants. That the soldiers of Alexander were so scared that we will not march further because the rulers of Indian subcontinent had vast armies of foot soldiers, chariots and elephants. Pause. So now students, let us read about the second Mahajanapada, which was the Vajji Empire. Okay, if you will look at a map on your page number 49, okay, on page number 49 you can see this map, you will be able to locate Vajji. Just above Magad, there is a smaller area called Vajji. Okay, now what used to happen? Let us read. While Magad became a powerful kingdom, Vajji with its capital at Vaishali in Bihar was under a different form of government known as Gana or Sangha. There are two words given here, Gana and Sangha. The meaning of that is given in this yellow box, so let us read that. See, Gana means group that has many members. So basically a group is called a Gana. And Sangha means organization or association. When you're in an organized group, that is called the Sangha. Okay. Now what used to happen in Vajji? Now people used to have a different form of government. See, Vajji was a Gana Sangha, a state ruled by the head of families belonging to a clan or by the chiefs of several clans. That means they did not have one king. They have several kings in Vajji. Okay. In a Gana or Sangha, there were not one, but many rulers, sometimes even thousands of men ruled together and each one was known as Raja. Now, how many rulers they had? Every ruler was known as Raja. These Rajas performed rituals together, okay? In Gana or Sangha, there were many rulers which were ruling together and each one was known as Raja. They had to perform rituals with each other, okay? They also met in assemblies and decided what had to be done through discussion and debate. Usually what happens when a particular king is in power, he will just decide whatever he wants to do. But in Vajji, because there were a lot of Rajas, there were a lot of kings, all the kings used to sit down and used to debate. Okay, they used to hold discussion so that they can reach at a common goal. For example, if they were attacked by an enemy, they met to discuss what should be done to meet the threat. For example, if they are attacked or they want to attack someone, one king cannot take the decision. All the kings will sit down and take the decision and then only they will work on it. However, you should remember that women, dasas and kamakars means servants could not participate in these assemblies. That means women, okay, servants and kamakars, laborers, were not allowed to participate in the assemblies. We have learnt about Buddha and Mahavira, correct, in our earlier chapter. They also belong to Gana or Sanghas, and some of the most vivid descriptions of the life in the Sangha can be found in the Buddhist book, that is Vinay Pitaka. We have already covered this. Turn your page to 54. Now, Rajas of powerful kingdoms tried to conquer the Sanghas, which was the Vajji Sangha. Okay, they tried to control it. Nevertheless, these lasted for a very long time till about 1500 years ago, when the last of the Gana or the Sanghas were conquered by the Gupta rulers, about which we will learn in later chapters. See, Vajji was a very powerful kingdom as well. However, it was small, but they had a different form of decision-making process. Earlier, we learned that there was only one king and he used to take decisions. But in Vajji, there were many kings and they all used to take decisions together. Okay, so this was it, student, for our chapter. I hope you all learnt well. Please go through the video as many times as you want to, so that you can understand, underline and mark the internal question and answers where I have told you to. Until then, take care. We'll meet you in our next class.